and Speakers Bureau Director. Shannon is currently secretary for Toastmasters4Writers. Our guest speakers on the panel are Ellen Byron. Ellen's Cajun Country Mysteries have won 2 Agatha Awards and multiple Lefty Awards. She also writes the Vintage Cookbook Mysteries, the Catering Hall Mysteries, under the name Maria de Rico, and will debut the Golden Motel Mysteries in 2024. Ellen is an award-winning playwright and non-award-winning TV writer of comedies like Wings, Just Shoot Me, and Fairly Odd Parents. But she considers her most impressive credit working as a waiter for Martha Stewart. Matt Coyle is the author of the best-selling Rick Cahill's Crimes, or is that Cahill? Crime Series. All right. His books have won the Anthony Seamus Lefty Authors on the Air Book of the Year, Ben Franklin Silver Forward Review Book of the Year Silver, and San Diego Book Awards. He was named the Mystery Writer of the Year for 2021 by the San Diego Writers Festival. Wow. All right, Shannon, I turn it over to you.
One word, I'm going to be muting all and then requesting our panelists unmute. So first of all, mute. And then I'm going to go ahead and unmute Shannon and Matt and Ellen and ask you guys to unmute so that we will not be interrupted. You will not have anyone interrupting you, and we'll open for questions whenever you say. So I will take it away.
Okay, thank you very much, Dawn. And thank you very much to Matt and Ellen for both agreeing to join me today. I related a lot to Laura's story that led into this because when I started out, I came in as a pitch hit for a panel for Sisters in Crime Los Angeles with, wow, I remember Nancy Silverman moderating. To be honest, the rest of it's a blur. And at that point, I got asked by the outgoing Speakers Bureau director if I would take the job. I did. And for a period of time, I enjoyed getting to bring together panels like this one for libraries and other organizations, and later got moved on to being the webmaster. Both Ellen and Matt are people I would not have hesitated to call on during my time on the board. And I'm very, very thankful that you're here with us today. As Dawn mentioned, there are some rules to Q&A. Please save your questions to the end. And when we open up for that, raise your electronic hands and Dawn will call on you and we'll go from there. What I'd like to start with, an icebreaker with Ellen and Matt, is what was your inspiration to make that move to write a first full-length book? Whoever wants to take it first.
Go ahead, Matt, you go.
No, go. I just said go, Ellen.
Oh, well, I was there's my first wordsmith. Yeah, right off the bat, sentence number 1. Second off, I don't think I'm gonna get through a sentence.
We'll have a contest. I will be very close to you.
So my inspiration was, I was not working at the time on television. I hadn't landed another job, and I was kind of burnt out anyway. And a friend started a writers group, and I'd always, well, in the past, I tried once before to write a mystery because I was so angry at a fellow television writer who backstabbed my partner and me that I wanted to kill him. And since I couldn't do it in real life, I thought, I love mysteries, I'll learn how to write one. And what I learned in that class at that time, and that was 1999, is that everyone in the class was better at it than me, and I was the one professional writer. So I didn't think about it until about 12 years later, when my friend started this little group, and I thought, I'm going to challenge myself and try to write a mystery again. And so that was my inspiration for writing a book. It was something I did not think I could do during those previous 12 years. I never thought I could write a book. And so I did it chapter by chapter, and then I found out about the William F. Deek Malice Domestic Grant for Unpublished Writers. And since I was unpublished in mysteries, I was eligible. And I submitted, and I ended up being one of the 2 winners that year. And that book never sold, but while it was out of submission, I wrote the first book that became the book, Plantation Shutters, that became the first book in my Cajun Country Mystery series.
It was my first. I made me finally write. First book was Guilt and Regret. I have a degree in English, which is very great precursor for my job in the restaurant business for many years. You either become a lawyer, a teacher, or I think you work in the restaurant business with an English degree. And I made the mistake of telling people that I was going to be a writer. I wanted to write crime since I was, I don't know, 13 or 14. And I've read the genre my entire life, but I never wrote. I would occasionally, when I thought that inspiration really, you needed inspiration to write, I would write in some weekends, but that was only good for about 3 or 4 pages. So when I was working for, that's the guilt part, is not following through on something that I should have. The regret is all these years going by and missing this window to write. So I was working for the 4th golf company I helped put out of business in 10 years. I saw the handwriting on the wall. They were going down. And I said to myself, well, this is it. I drew a line in the sand. And I said, and I was 43, I think. I said, you either have to start writing a book now, write a book, or you can't pretend it's something you're going to do anymore. You actually have to go out and start a career as opposed to going from one sales job to the other. So sure enough, the company went out of business, and I had a little bit of money saved up, and I wrote every day for 5 months on my little IBM ThinkPad with the floppy disk drive on my kitchen table. And after 5 months, I thought I had a book because it had the first chapter. I put chapter 1 on the first page, and at the bottom of the last page, I put the end. I thought that was a book. I learned that soon thereafter that it was a first draft. But so guilt and regret, very powerful forces.
Gotcha. At what point did you realize you were going to have to start speaking about what you'd written to other people?
For me, I think it was day one. I mean, look, I started originally, I wanted to be an actress. I'm embarrassed to even admit that, but I did comedy improv for 10 years. And I think the bigger problem for me is not getting me to talk. It's getting me to shut up. And so, I think it was just implied that I would have to talk about my books, and that you want that because it's so important as a tool of promoting your work to get out there and be in libraries and do signings. So it never occurred to me I wouldn't have to talk about my work.
Yeah, same thing for me. It was day one. And that for me was because I've gone to book signings. I probably went to book signings before I thought I was going to be a writer. And then once I decided I was going to be a writer, I started paying attention to them more, and obviously to support the trade. But yeah, from day one, what I didn't think understand is that there'd be more than just book signings or library talks. Other ancillary things would come up, which I probably wasn't really ready for. But that's life. I wasn't ready for anything.
Now, Matt, my suspicion is, and I could be wrong, that because you came out of sales, you might have been a bit more enlightened on the skill set that you need to go into public speaking. But then again, Ellen, you came out of the background you did.
Yeah.
Maybe it was obvious to both of you, or was there things that you didn't think about?
Oh, there's lots of things I didn't think about. I wasn't particularly good at sales, although I did it for many years. Somehow I made a living. But selling yourself, and I think that you really are selling yourself, as Toastmaster mentioned earlier, is sometimes a little more difficult, I think, as opposed to selling a product for a company, because that's your job, and you're dealing with a business that needs this product generally, and so you're not really putting upon anybody. Selling yourself is a little different, but I say selling yourself as opposed to selling your book, because I think majority of the events you do, for me, I think it's really important to sell yourself. And I don't mean that in a hard sale sort of way, just to allow people to get to know you. Because I think people really, every book signing I went to before I became published and ever since, if the writer, most of the times the writers are very engaging, which I'm interested, another one will lead me to buy their book, perhaps if it even wasn't something that I specifically was interested in, because I had a connection with the author. So I think selling yourself is very important.
You know, it's so interesting you say that, because I agree. And part of what flipped it for me, I think the hardest thing for me is when I had an opportunity, I had to do like a little speech. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can do Q&As and stuff, but how do I put together a little speech? And then I realized I built it around 3 sentences that have meant a lot to me in my life. And so I developed a little keynote. But the other thing is that I read somewhere that, yeah, and this was great. I read this a few years ago, and that when you make a first impression, everyone thinks self-confidence is the first thing people relate to. And they did a study, and it showed that what people relate to was not self-confidence. The things that people instantly relate to are warmth and competence. That if your vibe, or what your persona is giving off is a sense of warmth and competence, that's an immediate positive first impression. And so that really stayed with me, because I think when I worked in TV, I really had to sit on warmth, and of course you had to be competent, you had to be funny. But you kind of like, you couldn't, especially as a woman, and I was usually I had a writing partner, also a woman, and we were usually quite, for the majority of our career, we were the only women in the room. Maybe there was one other, and then there would be 10 men, and the dynamic, and especially the comic dynamic of men and women, is very different. So you have to learn to be like that, and being the warm, kind of like earthy, the warm person doesn't necessarily fit into that. In fact, at one point my nickname was Debbie Downer, because I was so busy trying to be like, I'm cool. I'm good. It's like that kind of like jaded persona that was much more effective in the room, I thought, than coming off as warm, which was actually kind of a turnoff in that environment. So, but in our environment, it's really, I love it, because I get to be myself and, and share that with readers. And it's exactly what Matt said. If you make a personal connection, that's what people relate to, and they may not even be interested in what you're writing, but they like you and want to see what you wrote and how that's an extension of you.
Okay, Matt, Ellen talked a little bit about what she identified where she needed to find that area of growth for her. Was there anything like that for you?
Yeah, and it came in the middle of a talk. It was a shock. I was speaking, I think, at Warwick's in La Jolla, which is my hometown, and it's where I have my book launch every year. And people that know me for years, a very warm, welcoming crowd. And in the middle of the talk, I suddenly, I think I would call it a panic attack. I don't think there's maybe a couple people noticed it, where my throat got very tight, and I was having a hard time breathing, but I was still trying to talk. And it's, I don't know if anybody's ever had one before. I don't even know. I just call it stage fright, but it was in the middle. And I don't know if anyone's ever had a panic attack before. And I'm guessing that's what it is. I wasn't diagnosed or anything. I lived through it. I've lived through subsequent ones, but it's difficult to talk, and your voice changes a little bit. So, and that surprised me too. It's like, what? Wait a second. I was prepared for this. There were people that really wanted to hear me talk. Fantastic crowd, and I had this panic attack. So that was something I wasn't expecting, and I can talk about what I did to try to overcome it now, or if you want to go on to the next question with Ellen and have me come back to that.
Well, Ellen, is there anything you wanted to specifically focus on that you did? Because you gave us a pretty wide breadth there earlier of things that you identified, like the warmth and things being looked for, and yet where you'd been working in comedy and as the woman in the room, is there anything specific that you want to, story you might want to identify out of any of that?
I'm not quite sure how to answer that. I would say that one thing I have to be careful of is going off on tangents. You know, it's very easy for me to kind of like, you know, drift off, and then I have to, so staying focused, I think, is super important. And I want to, you know, focus on that. And that's why the 3 sentences that changed my life, creating a little keynote speech that was very specific to those. And I, you know, I thought, okay, someone is going to ask what those 3 sentences are, so I will share them. One is, are you interested or committed? Which I heard in a Weight Watchers meeting, and I'm absolutely interested in weight loss, but not committed, and I'm committed to writing. So the other one was, do you listen or do you wait to talk? Which I think is hugely important for this group, Toastmaster. And I really realized for years I was waiting to talk and not listening. And I think it's really critical, you know, and I did that a lot in the room, and because I would interrupt people and get in trouble for it. And so that was a game changer. And the third is during my journalist period, one of the people, I did celebrity interviews mostly, and I interviewed Shirley MacLaine. And I happened to mention that I was scared of flying, and she gave me a mantra. She said, when you're on a plane, I want you to say, and you're feeling that feeling. And Matt, this kind of applies to what you're talking about in the panic attack. Say to yourself, I'm having a safe, uneventful journey. And what that did was really just flip the script for me in so many ways, because I use it all the time. I use it when I feel like what Matt, you're talking about, you know, start to get panicked or nervous about something that has nothing to do with any form of traveling. I'll just say I'm having a safe, uneventful journey, because journey is such an all-encompassing word. It can apply to emotion and not just, you know, motor vehicles, because I also use it in the car and the freeway a lot. So, and, you know, when I feel that Christopher Walken and Annie Hall moment, you know, I'm going to drive into oncoming traffic, or when I just say to myself, I'm having a safe, uneventful journey. And it's just like, it just is centering and calming.
I would like to say that in the middle of a panic attack, but I have no breath to be able to talk.
Think it. You don't have to say it out loud. You think it in your head.
Okay.
Think it in your head.
So Matt, did you want to follow up on earlier? We definitely have time if you'd like to.
Well, I haven't really come up with a great solution. I like Ellen's idea. When I first want to speak for any situation, if I'm giving a speech, which makes me more uncomfortable than talking about one of my books where it's a little more open-ended, I try to kind of have a joke or, you know, an observation or something that's maybe humorous in the beginning of the talk to lighten the crowd up a little bit, but it also lightens me up substantially. But what I found, and this isn't always possible, is that when I'm sitting, I'm not as prone to a panic attack as when I'm standing.
Oh, interesting.
And at Warwick's, I've asked them behind the scenes, I've told them why I want a chair, and they'll get me a chair behind this podium because I'm more comfortable in the chair for some reason. If there's ever an opportunity for me to stand or sit, I always sit. Now, that's not overcoming the problem, but at least it's dealing with it. And I always have water. Now, I'm not nervous today. I mean, I'm always nervous before something, but I always have water. And if you're in the middle where you can't breathe, you can take a little breath and take a sip of water, and sometimes coughing helps too, to be able to get your breath back. And they don't last that long, but kind of unusual when it comes up. Yes, Ellen.
But I was going to say, Matt, the next time you take that break to take a sip of water, run that sentence through your head. I'm having a safe, uneventful journey, and see if it kind of, you know, add that in mentally to your process, and it might help. And I love that you found that physical adjustment too. That's really, really smart too. And it is part, you know, sometimes there are things that we have that aren't necessarily a cure for, but we adapt. We find ways to adapt and help us through them. I think that's great.
I've just been taking a lot of drugs lately for it, so that seems to help.
Seriously, or
no?
Okay.
No.
Thank you. Actually, that's something we were talking about, toolkits. This whole discussion is something I need to put in mind. Just to set this up real quick from my perspective as both a member of this club and having worked the Speakers Bureau. One of the reasons that I stopped working panels and stopped moderating was I had a situation, the very last panel I moderated was for was a luncheon for the AAUW. And there was, I forget the whole context now of who made the statement among the panelists, but it had something to do with how their mother had influenced their writing. And my mother had just recently passed away. And I realized I didn't have the professional toolkit to keep holding it together. And and that's a big part of why I came to Toastmasters. And you're like equipping yourself just in case the unexpected happens, you know, or you don't know what would make you comfortable. Granted, that was an unknown. I didn't expect that to come out of said panelist's mouth, but I've had the idea of setting yourself up for success is making sure you're as comfortable as possible. If there's anything you know of personally that's in for you, Matt has that thinking, I think, exactly right. And
I think Ellen's better, but thanks.
Well, you know, I will say, but Shannon, to your point, I've cried at I've you know, cried on panels, and you know, Katrina McPherson's a wonderful author who's, you know, cheeses me about when's Ellen going to cry, because you know it can be a very emotional thing, and I think as long as you don't lose control, you know, sharing your emotions is real and relatable and honest, and I think that's okay. I mean, you don't want an audience to feel oh God, you know, you know, but showing emotions is part of being a human and being connected to others. So
I absolutely agree with that. I think some vulnerability, honest vulnerability that people do connect to, and I agree. You don't want to completely lose control. And sometimes when you're thinking about family and things like that, it can be very difficult. But yeah, I think being honest with your audience and at times being vulnerable, I don't know, I mean, maybe there's no way to avoid it at times, but I think it's fine.
yeah.
But I'm not an expert.
In fact, actually at the, when I was nominated for the Cajun Country Mysteries last year for Cajun Kiss of Death, it was the last book in the series. They had cut the series was canceled for a reason I won't go into, and it's fine. It was, I understood why and got it, and but they brought it up on the panel and I started to cry. And you know, and everyone was, there's like an awe in the audience, and you know, and then I brought it, you know, then I brought it back in, you know, and talked about the emotion of that, and I ended up winning. So I don't know if that was if that was a sympathy vote or not, but I'll take it.
I think it just shows connection to your work and how important it is to you.
Yeah,
Everybody likes that.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
I think this would be a good time if there is anybody who has questions. I know there are folks that saw this invite from Sisters in Crime who graciously, through the Speakers Bureau, helped with the panelists today. I know that it also went out in the newsletter for the Southern California chapter of Mystery Writers of America, since I rejoined this year to promote Doc and Sally. Is there, oh, and Dawn, you're going to take care of this from here, calling people out for the Q&A? I mean,
Yeah,
let us know.
if you would like to participate in the Q&A, by all means, raise your electronic hand. If you don't know where that is, it's under reactions. And once you're called on, you finish your Q&A question with the panelists, then you lower your hand. But our first person to raise a hand today is Karen Gerst. So if you're ready, Shannon, I'll ask.
Yep, please do.
Unmute.
Hi, thank you so much. I've really appreciated listening to both of you, and thank you, Shannon. This was really a fabulous meeting and hearing from these two writers. I guess I would like to ask the writers, you know, how do you choose which portion of your book to read? Do you practice it? Do you kind of act it out? What kind of decision-making goes involved when you are asked to read a portion of your novels?
Yeah.
Sure, that is a great question. I am a huge believer in less is more, because I have a very short attention span and I
Mhm.
panic when people are reading. That's where I start to have a panic attack because I actually have ADHD. So, it's like listening to people unless they act it out. It's very easy to lose me. So I make a choice to read a portion and keep it very short, keep it under the limit. And I make sure it has humor and a story point. And I do practice out loud. I am not one of those people. A lot of writers will read their books to out loud. I can't do that because of my acting background. I start acting it out. So I'm not listening or trying to find where I made mistakes. I'm too busy entertaining myself. But so those are the things I consider. A point of humor, because that's my skill set is humor, and then a story point that'll make people leave them going, ooh, I want more. Always leave them wanting more, is my theory.
I think Ellen made a great point, is that you don't want to read too long. I try to keep it as brief as possible. I don't read for every signing, as a matter of fact. I do for the local ones because it's my crowd, they're my people. But I generally do try to read from the opening chapter, and hopefully there's enough of a hook there to get the people interested. And I always edit for time, but invariably when I do, and I think all the writers in the room will appreciate this, I think, well, why didn't I just cut that in the first place? I didn't need that. Cut that. Of course, it's too late at that point. But yeah, as little as possible and with a hook.
Okay,
And it
looks
doesn't
like
mean, I mean,
Pamela's
you can
up
put a
next.
couple,
Oh,
you can put a
sorry,
couple
Matt.
passages together. Sorry,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Okay, so real quick, go back to the passages together. I thought you were done.
No, what I'm saying is you can,
Yes.
don't go too long, but you can have the kind of an entree here and then the hook here, and if they can come together, cut the middle out.
Yes, you can absolutely, it's your own work. No one's going to go, wait, she didn't read this part. So, and I actually don't read if I'm doing like a little thing, unless I'm asked to read, I generally don't.
Okay, now Pamela, go ahead.
I love your answers, by the way. I wanted to find out, Matt talked about writing every day, and I was wondering, how long do you write every day, Saturdays and Sundays, working on the weekends as well, of course. I just had a coaching client that said to me that they didn't work on the weekend. I was like, I was flummoxed, literally. I was just writing an article about this experience. I was flummoxed. I didn't know what to say to this
Flummoxed.
person.
Very good.
I love that word. I
Matt, too.
actually just used it in my manual. I use it all the time.
I'm not sure I've ever used it. I do write every day, particularly when as the book goes along, because I'm usually behind. So I do write every day, and even if I'm not writing every day in the very beginning of a book, I'm generally doing something in the business. But yeah, I write every day, and the hours generally, around 4 to 6. Some probably as it goes on. It's really kind of more of a word count for me.
Yes, me too.
And I don't start with the deadline word count in the beginning, which I've sort of moved into that. I start with a lesser word count where it's okay. And then as I progress, it gets a little longer. And then of course I'm generally behind. So the last 2 months, it's quite extensive, quite long. But yeah, I do write every day. You got to work the muscle. And specifically when I'm in the middle of a contract or something. And deadlines.
I outline because that's after, it's a holdover from my TV career. And then when I'm on a draft, my goal is to write between Monday and Friday, 10,000 words. So basically 2,000 words a day. The reason now on the weekends and at night, I'm doing social media, blog posts. And the reason I schedule myself this way is because my darling, wonderful husband once said to me, since you've been writing books, I see you more, but I talk to you less because I'm always going, don't talk to me, I'm writing. So when he said that, I decided that to make, the Monday through Friday, the goal when, he knows if I'm writing a draft, I'm in a certain mindset where interrupting me is detrimental. In fact, when I had roommates in New York and I was writing plays and stuff, I actually made a little sign I would wear that said, "Am writing," and I'd wear it if I went out and took a break so that my roommates would know, don't talk to her now, don't interrupt her because she's in the zone. And yeah, because when I worked in TV, my hours, I could work literally an entire 70-hour week but when I was off, and it's very hard not to have almost a 24-hour writing life these days. Because, there's social media and their blog posts and, it's just an endless hamster wheel.
I think
So
the point
you
is
kinda have
though,
to maintain
is
some
there's
control.
no correct way to do it. Whatever works for you, but you have to find something that does work for you.
Exactly.
Okay, looks like our Toastmaster Laura is up next.
I would like to hear your, when you're rewriting. I mean, many years ago, I read a quote from Robert Heinlein. He says, "I don't rewrite, I just put everything down." And I thought, what? What do you think about that? And what is your rewriting theory and modus operandi?
Well, for me, because I don't outline, I've tried, but I don't outline. My first draft is an outline, and I dump everything in there. I don't, if something pops up in my brain, I call it dropping an anchor. I'm not even sure what it means. I put it in the scene. And then I revise at the, after I revise every day, whatever it's worth the day before, but writing is revision for me. Now, if you're more organized, fine. But the words don't come out that pure for me. So I'm definitely rewriting. I revise and revise. I probably write 7 or 8 drafts of a book, and these aren't huge rewrites, but it's condensing down. Oops, I missed that connection. So revise. Absolutely.
I have to tell you something funny. I have come now, and I actually do a webinar, the organics of outlining. As someone said, my outline is my first draft, because it's like I'll do a 30-page single space broken out by scenes, but I call it a fluid outline because it changes all the time. My outline is the path, it's not the destination, but it is literally my first draft, really.
Okay.
And but in television, especially in sitcoms where the schedule is so brutal, if you were a strong first draft writer, it's a very, when showrunners hear that, they want to hire you. And we had, my writing partner and I, because it was 2 of us, we had reputations as strong first draft writers. And so because my outline is really kind of my first draft, when I'm doing my actual manuscript first draft, where I'm fixing a lot of the problems I already had in the outline, it's pretty tight. Of course, I go through many, a half dozen revisions after that, of varying degrees. If where word count is short, I once it turned out to be I needed 70,000 words with 60,000 words. So I had to suddenly find 10,000 words, and that was a bigger rewrite than usual. But the other thing for me is that I've learned that 70,000 words is my sweet spot. So I have my agent, when I get a contract, if it says 80,000 words, the first thing I have my agent do is cross it out and make it 70. And the only time with Berkeley, they said, how about 75? And I was like, okay, but there are times when that 75,000 words literally includes, to Jerry, I love you. And at the end, here are, an extra, you have no idea. If you see a 2-page acknowledgments in my book, my word count was short.
Okay.
Ellen was known in
Linda
the
Folsom?
Ellen was
Oh,
known
sorry,
in the TV
Matt.
biz. No, Ellen was known in the TV biz as tight first draft, but a bit of a downer.
Okay, I think we're ready for you, Linda.
Hi. So as somebody who in 2 weeks is going to have a first reading ever, I really appreciate all of these notes that you've given me, and I'm really going to take it into account. But, and I thought that pretty much you had answered most of my questions about what to choose and how long to write, to Karen's question, but then you mentioned social media, and that popped into my head. How do you use social media? What is like one hint, one suggestion you would give in terms of maximizing the benefit of social media?
Okay, I'll jump in. I would say, first of all, hopefully you start a little bit before you've been building up, be a part of the community. I think it's the most important thing. And find the mode that works for you. I'm pretty good on Facebook. That's where I live. Twitter, I don't really understand. Instagram, how do you post this thing? So Facebook, I've been part of the community for, I don't know, 10, 12 years, which is crazy. But as you're growing the community, be a part of it, like other people's posts, comment, be commenter. But if you're doing that, you're building these relationships. And so when it's time for your stuff to come out, and people give you latitude when you have a book coming out. It's going to be me talking about me a lot coming in this next month or so. People understand that. So just be a part of the community and trying, even when it's pub date time, try to throw an occasional look at me
Yes.
post, I would say.
I was so, believe it or not, I was so uncomfortable with like Rick had spoken earlier about, promoting yourself. I created what I call a shameless
You
shilling.
call me Rick? You call me Rick.
She
Rick,
did, she
oh my
did.
God, Rick
You've read
Cahill.
my work.
I did. Yes, I have. I called you by your, I have. I love your books. So I call Matt, I created what I call for each launch, I call a shameless shilling campaign. And it's literally now actually some of my readers look forward to it because it's jokey and it's silly. It's like, because it's like, what am I doing? I'm shamelessly shilling. So I just called it what it is. And I'll do things like for a recent release, the title of the book was Wined and Died in New Orleans. So I did terrible wine puns. I think if you approach a sense of humor, and Matt is right, you have to use yourself too, because people who just share, this is my book, go buy my book, no one will listen, it's boring. The other thing is build everything Matt said, and I'll add to that is really work hard to start building your newsletter list, because one thing they tell
Very
you
good.
is that social media, well, look what just happened with Twitter. Elon Musk took it over, and it's pardon my language, it's a shit show. I'm on Twitter my readers are not on Twitter. They're on Facebook. So that's where I really, cozy readers are more likely to be on Facebook, and some Instagram. So I do those more. Twitter, I don't even share my link because that's where I spout off about politics and various other things. So it's kind of my little space. But it's become so weird since Elon Musk took it over, and everyone's like pitching all these different other Twitter-like places that have not really landed. But if you have a newsletter, that's your group. Those are your people, who are dedicated readers, hopefully. And to grow that list, encourage people to sign up for it. You can even do some giveaways, with other writers where people sign up for your newsletter. And when you go to these events and start pitching your books, encourage the people who attend the events to sign up for it.
Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, I don't see any other questions. So I have one last one before we wrap up. Ellen, I believe that I read recently you're going to have a keynote at Left Coast Crime. Did I read that correctly?
Oh, I'm the Toastmaster.
You're a Toastmaster.
That's it. For that level of scale speech, like a Toastmaster level, what are you going to do to prepare? Because that's one of the kind of things that we prepare for every day.
Well, I am taking my orders from the chairs of the people who are organizing it, and they ask very specific things. I'm not giving a Toastmaster speech. I give an introduction speech, very short. They want it short. So I've written a little very humorous short speech. Then I have to introduce the guests of honor. So I have a little, again, my thing is humor. So I have a little humorous, I've combined for each of them a paragraph where I extol their writing virtues and then add a little humor to it. And then I will close, these are the opening ceremonies, and then I will close it with one sending people off to have a good time. And I will also, but I'll add to that, I'll say, this is one thing I'm saying is don't make fun of anyone or feel, or be superior to anyone wearing a mask, because having caught COVID at the last convention and Malice Domestic at the convention, they're way smarter than me. So I'll make it somewhat humorous. And then at the actual banquet, it will be it'll be just, hey, everyone having fun. And then we give out the awards. And part of this was motivated on their part by having a Toastmaster who wouldn't stop. And I was at that thing.
So was I.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Infamous.
Rick, see, I did it again, Matt. I'm going to
Rick Cahill, everybody. Rick Cahill.
Matt, I'm gonna do this now. Now it gets in my head to call you Rick. So I'll be
That's
doing
fine.
that at Left Coast.
It's fine.
But I'm opening my speech with a little singing, just as an inside joke.
Somebody had to finally do that. But however, Shannon, actually, I am
Yeah.
giving a keynote speech next week to, I think, 300 high schoolers. So that'll be interesting. Yeah. That's not my usual groove.
Understood. I knew it was mainly Ellen's, but I didn't want to automatically shut you out if there was something I didn't
No.
know.
So Matt, how are you approaching that? That's curious.
Well, luckily I was able to choose a topic, so I was just going to talk about my road to publication. There's little educational things in there. They're all kids who are involved in creative writing. It's really cool.
That's
pretty cool.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, I thank both of you very much for all the time today and answering everybody's questions. It's just I just feel, having been here now for, I think it's about close to 4 years, there aren't as many opportunities that we get to talk about public speaking and yet intersect with other writers. And as Laura mentioned, going into this, we have a structure called Pathways that suggests to us different types of speeches to try. And when I saw this one, I was like, this is an interesting gateway for me to kind of bring all that together and honestly challenge myself, because this is the first panel I've moderated in Zoom and the first panel that I've moderated since the one I described earlier at AUW, which would have been about that same time ago. So again, thank you both for all the information you've shared. Thank you I see Ellen has something.
Yes, I just want to say you've done a fantastic job,
I agree.
Shannon.
Just say the same thing.
And also, when moderating is a real skill, and I've been on panels where there are terrible moderators and it tanks the panel.
Yeah.
So you have to prepare, which you did a marvelous job of, and then maintain control over the panel and kind of be a guide. And I think you did a great job, and you're on it's a great pathway for you.
I agree. And thanks for having us. It's a lot of fun.
Yes.
Okay, last bit before we let it completely go. If people want to find you, where can they find or get in touch with you?
Go ahead, Ellen.
Oh, my website, ellenbyron.com. You can always email me through the website. I have a contact page, and you can find me. I have a personal and author page on Facebook. It's probably the best. I'm also on Instagram. And unless you want to hear me, spouting off about politics, stay away from my Twitter page.
Yeah, I'm mattcoylebooks.com and on Instagram, and occasionally not Instagram, Facebook is where I really live, a little bit on Instagram. But yeah, please stop by. And as Ellen said, if you do visit my website, there you can contact me via that, and I'd love to hear from readers or anybody.
Okay,
Even
great. I
non-readers.
mainly wanted to be sure, because we didn't really have the time for people to go find out more about your books or really break down into them. If they wanted to learn about them, you've told them where to go. And I really appreciate that. Again, appreciate your time. Everyone, thank you for listening. Have a great day.
Thank you.
And back to you, Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you. Wonderful. How many of you learned something here today? I did. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Shannon. Good job. We won't do the minute of writing love notes at this time, because we want to stay on time. And I think with this setup, we don't need that little formula in our meeting. I want to remind you, we're about to take a break, that you will want to have some paper, pencil, or any other writing instrument that you prefer, so that we can play the game with Linda. That is